I don't think marriage should be about money, but some people really care about wealth more than anything else. My sister-in-law Laura is one of those people. I never thought greed would become such a big issue over an inheritance after my brother, a well-respected surgeon, died. I'm Julia Roberts. I manage a jewelry store, and I'm happy being single at 35. However, I've been thinking about marriage since my boyfriend recently proposed. Our families are getting together tomorrow to celebrate our engagement, but I can feel tension brewing. My older brother Kyle, who is a well-known surgeon in Paris, has always looked out for me and taught me a lot because he's much older. He jokes about checking out my boyfriend as if he were my dad, which makes me laugh, but I can tell he's a bit worried. Kyle's marriage to Laura, a very beautiful woman with questionable morals, really shows the conflict between looks and true character. Despite their glamorous life, Laura's love for luxury puts a strain on our family relationships. Her need for expensive things often comes before her promises, leaving us let down and upset. At first, we overlooked Laura's behavior, thinking it was because of the pressure to look good. But as she started skipping more family events, our patience started to wear thin. Her decision to cancel on tomorrow's gathering at the last minute for tea at a fancy hotel is a perfect example of her selfishness. While we wouldn't mind her not being there, it's her lack of thought for others that really bothers me. I'm tired of always bending over backward to accommodate her every whim. I tried to talk to my brother about it, but his weakness for Laura stops any serious conversation. He just apologized for the inconvenience and tried to reassure me. He promised he would talk to her about her actions. I'll be there tomorrow, he assured me, convincing me to drop the issue for now. What bothers me the most isn't just Laura's selfishness, but also how she gets my busy brother to say sorry for her and do her tasks, even though she doesn't work and could handle them herself. Despite being at home full-time, Laura doesn't do housework. She hires cleaners and prefers to eat out. Her days are filled with shopping for brand name items, leaving little time for real responsibilities. The next day, our family meeting went well, and my boyfriend won everyone over. It was a nice gathering, although it didn't last long. That evening, just as I was relaxing, Laura called out of the blue and started yelling. She demanded scones and macarons and scolded me for neglecting her. Confused, I tried to talk to her calmly, but she kept shouting. Despite my efforts to explain, Laura kept demanding, paying no attention to reason. She even demanded a souvenir from the hotel and had so many other unreasonable expectations that left me both puzzled and tired. What should have been a happy evening ended with me feeling exhausted and annoyed because of Laura's unreasonable demands and outbursts. I wondered how Kyle managed to find peace in his daily life with Laura's constant mood swings. What made him marry her in the first place? While her beauty was obvious, her self-centered nature was off-putting. I thought maybe she was spoiled because of her looks. I was worried for Kyle, but I knew I shouldn't interfere with his marriage. It was his choice after all, and he had always respected my choices too. The next day, at the jewelry store where I work, I saw Laura outside walking arm in arm with a man around her age, probably in his late 30s. They were chatting comfortably as they came into the store. I paused before going over to them. Laura acted like nothing was wrong when she saw me, which made me even more uncomfortable. When I asked about the man with her, Laura said he was just an old friend from her modeling days. Still, seeing them together, especially since she's married, made me feel uneasy. As Laura looked at the jewelry, she boldly asked if she could get an employee discount, seemingly unaware that this was inappropriate. I calmly told her we don't offer such discounts. Honestly, I didn't like the idea of her friend buying things for her, and she seemed slightly annoyed when I told her the discount wasn't available. Laura picked out some items and left, leaving the man to pay the bill. This made me wonder about their relationship. That evening, I decided to talk to Kyle about what I saw, but when I called him, he seemed really down. "Kyle, what's wrong?" I asked, noticing he was upset. I had my suspicions about Laura, but I didn't mention them. When I tried to talk about my upcoming wedding, Kyle seemed distracted by his own thoughts. He talked about saving for our wedding next year and invited me over, but didn't say much about Laura. His uncertainty made me curious. Although I tried to discuss the wedding details, Kyle was non-committal and ended the call abruptly, asking me to meet at our parents' house without explaining why. Maybe he wasn't feeling well. Kyle, a dedicated surgeon, often puts other people's needs before his own health, and this tendency of his to ignore his own health worries me. Despite his jokes about the risks of his job, I couldn't stop thinking that his non-stop work schedule was wearing him down. I doubted that Laura, with her self-centered attitude, could give him the support he needed. Kyle sent an email later outlining the plan for a gathering at our parents' house. When I got there, I was shocked to see how pale and worn he looked, worse than ever before. I asked him how he was, but he just gave me vague answers about being busy with work. Finally, I gathered the courage to talk about Laura's recent actions. I told him about her visit to my store with a young man and wondered aloud if she was deceiving him again. Laura's past actions had always worried me, and I couldn't overlook them any longer. "I've been too busy with work to pay much attention to her," my brother confessed. Our parents were upset by her absence at the gathering, which gave me a chance to bring up my concerns. When I asked Kyle about Laura's absence, he said solemnly, "Laura isn't here today, which is why I asked you all to come." "I have a favor to ask." With a serious look, Kyle shared some shocking news. Despite our shock, he stood firm, leaving us stunned. 5 months later, tragedy struck as my brother died from stomach cancer, a result of constant stress and overwork. It was a harsh truth to face. Despite his commitment to saving others, he had neglected his own health. He had started to see signs and went through tough tests that confirmed his illness. We wished he had told us sooner. Tears flowed at his funeral, surrounded by a deep feeling of loss. I remembered all the ways Kyle had supported me during my early challenges. His death, before he even turned 30, left us overwhelmed with grief. Yet during our mourning, Laura's actions were glaringly obvious. She wore a flashy necklace to the funeral, a gift from another man, showing no respect for the solemn occasion. Her insensitive behavior was unbearable. Overcome with anger, I confronted her. "Why are you wearing that?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Don't you realize how much my brother cared for you?" Laura just smiled, seemingly untouched by the seriousness of the situation. "I know," she replied carelessly. "It's just how the world works. If you're so unhappy, why did you marry me?" Her harsh words really hurt, and I had to hold back my anger in front of my brother, our parents, and the others. It was clear that Laura didn't care about my brother's memory, as all of her selfish behavior and her careless talk about their marriage and waiting for her inheritance made me furious. Before I knew it, I almost slapped her, but a man by her side caught my hand. He then introduced himself as a nurse who had worked with Kyle and was here to look after me at Kyle's request. I was confused, trying to understand everything going on. Despite the sadness of the funeral, hearing the laughter of the nurses and doctors who were Kyle's colleagues brought me a moment of comfort amidst the chaos. I turned to the nurse who had stopped me during the laughter for some clarity. His reply was straightforward. "Did the doctor leave any inheritance behind? Your family should know." His words hit home. I knew very well that my brother hadn't left any inheritance, but Laura, not knowing this, became hysterical. She started accusing us of plotting against her to take the money for ourselves. She was sure she would soon get a large sum of money. As Laura's accusations grew louder, the nurse's amusement turned into full laughter. Seeing things getting out of hand, my dad stepped in, calm but assertive. "Do you really not know?" he asked her. Eager for answers, Laura demanded to know what was going on. I obliged, sharing the details of my brother's financial arrangements. During his lifetime, he had set aside 20 million euros specifically for my wedding, and had other generous gifts planned as well. As this reality dawned on Laura, her expression changed dramatically from shock to pale disbelief. My brother, although highly respected for his medical expertise, was known for his lavish spending habits. He indulged in extravagant parties, exclusive dinners, and luxurious accommodations as a way to relieve the stress from his demanding career and family responsibility. Despite his intent to share these joys with Laura, she was notably absent during both his challenging and celebratory moments. It was not Laura who stood by him during tough times. Instead, it was his colleagues and friends, the very people who were now gathered to pay their respects, who supported him. The nurses, whose laughter had earlier filled the room, began to share poignant memories of my brother's acts of kindness and generosity. They recounted how, despite his hectic schedule, he always made time to look after them, hosting gatherings that left a lasting impression. Their stories deepened their admiration for him, inspiring them to strive harder in their own careers. As they spoke, they revealed another significant act of kindness from my brother: the donation of the remainder of his estate to the hospital. Representatives from the hospital were present and expressed their gratitude for his contribution, which would help alleviate their annual struggles with research funding and improve future medical care. Witnessing the extent of my brother's compassion towards others, I couldn't help but feel a pang of disappointment towards Laura. While he had impacted so many lives in such positive ways, Laura, who should have been his closest companion, displayed nothing but selfishness and greed. Months later, Laura contacted me, her tone as demanding as ever, eager to secure what she believed was her rightful inheritance. However, her careless management of the estate affairs revealed a shocking truth. Despite my brother's considerable earnings, his assets were nearly depleted. In her pursuit of the mansion and other properties, Laura had overlooked the fact that Kyle had accumulated significant debts. This oversight left her with only a fraction of what she had anticipated. Her pleas for help were met with no sympathy, as her earlier behavior had alienated those who might have otherwise been inclined to assist her. I made it clear to Laura that with Kyle's passing, the family ties that loosely bound us had effectively dissolved. Her behavior throughout had spoken louder than any words could, revealing her true motives despite her claims of affection for my brother. "I could potentially help you out of this trouble," I told her. "But how can you expect that after you've been so blatantly selfish?" My voice was tinged with disbelief and disappointment as I spoke. Laura's response was fraught with impatience, a stark contrast to the composed facade she usually maintained. She was grappling with the new and harsh reality of inheriting not only the mansion, but also the substantial debts that came with it. I reminded her, somewhat coldly, that inheriting meant taking responsibility for both assets and liabilities. I even pointed out that she had the option to renounce the inheritance within 5 months of being informed. The suggestion that she might sell the luxury items she had amassed over the years to cover the debts only elicited a flood of tears and desperate pleas for forgiveness. Despite her remorse, or perhaps because of the insincerity I felt underlined it, I found myself unable to offer any consolation. The conversation ended with a heavy heart on my part, as I was unable to reconcile her past actions with the cherished memory of my brother. Following Kyle's death, the plans for my wedding had to be postponed by a year. During this challenging period, a cloud of depression lingered over me, a stark reminder of the loss and betrayal I had experienced. Recognizing my distress, my husband and his family extended their heartfelt understanding and support. Their compassion was a beacon of light during a time darkened by loss and disappointment. Determined not to let the memory of my late brother down, I vowed to live a life of gratitude, channeling my energies into supporting and acknowledging those who had stood by me through thick and thin. When the wedding finally took place, it was not just a celebration of union, but also a tribute to Kyle's lasting impact on those around him. His popularity and the respect he commanded among his colleagues became poignantly evident as many of them visited his grave to pay their respects. They shared stories of his generosity and kindness, especially towards his co-workers, further cementing his legacy as a man who had genuinely cared for others beyond the confines of family and personal gain. Through these reflections and tributes, the wedding became a dual ceremony of love and remembrance, intertwining my new beginning with the honoring of a life that, while tragically cut short, had profoundly touched many. This convergence of joy and sorrow underscored the complexities of life and the enduring influence of genuine connections forged in both joyous and challenging times. I was always concerned that my brother's generosity might make him vulnerable to those looking to exploit his kind nature. However, the overwhelming support from friends and colleagues after his passing reassured me that his goodwill had been genuinely appreciated, not taken advantage of. Meanwhile, news about Laura's decline began to circulate within the jewelry industry and among our social circles. Known for her lavish lifestyle and a series of questionable relationships, she painted a stark contrast to my brother's legacy of generosity and integrity. Laura, who had once lived in luxury, was now forced to sell her opulent mansion due to her unsustainable spending habits and the mountain of debt she had accumulated over the years. Now she found herself living in modest accommodations, a far cry from the grandeur she was accustomed to. Her financial downfall was a topic of quiet discussion and served as a cautionary tale about the perils of living beyond one's means. Reflecting on Laura's misfortunes, I couldn't help but feel vindicated in my long-held belief that marrying for money was a fundamentally flawed motivation. It was clear that Laura's priorities had led her to a lonely and challenging path, whereas my brother's focus on kindness and giving had earned him lasting respect and love from those around him. Motivated by these reflections, I vowed more fervently to honor my brother's memory by protecting his legacy. He had spent his life not only as a skilled surgeon, but as a pillar of support and generosity in our community. In his professional life, he was revered not just for his medical expertise, but for his willingness to go beyond the call of duty to assist his colleagues and patients alike. At home, he had always been my protector, guiding and supporting me through life's challenges. Determined to keep his spirit alive, I engaged more actively in community service and charity work, areas my brother was passionate about. I organized fundraisers and volunteered at the hospital where he had worked, helping to fund the programs he had started or supported. These efforts brought me a sense of closeness to him, a feeling that I was continuing his work in some way. Moreover, I took steps to ensure that the stories of his kindness and generosity were remembered and celebrated. I shared these stories at community gatherings and on social media, ensuring that his legacy would inspire others as much as it inspired me. The positive responses from people who had been touched by my brother's life encouraged me to keep sharing and celebrating his life. In doing so, I found a profound sense of purpose. While Laura's life seemed to spiral into chaos as a result of her choices, I found strength and fulfillment in upholding the values my brother had taught me. This contrast between our paths was a stark reminder of the different outcomes that result from our life choices. By choosing to embody my brother's principles of generosity and support, I not only honored his memory, but also enriched my own life, making it fuller and more meaningful. Through these actions, I not only kept my brother's memory alive, but also ensured that his legacy of kindness and selflessness continued to impact the community, proving that the values he lived by were his true lasting wealth.
Look at you, still wearing those cheap clothes, Vanessa smirked as she sauntered into my living room, her designer handbag swinging from her freshly manicured fingers. I, on the other hand, just had the most amazing transformation. Want to guess how much my new face costs? I stared at my sister-in-law, my heart pounding against my chest as the realization hit me. The sudden changes in her appearance, the bandages barely hidden by her expensive sunglasses, and that smug smile that seemed even more pronounced than usual. It all made terrible sense. "You didn't," I whispered, my fingers clutching the edge of my coffee table. "My name is Olivia Chen, and at 32, I just discovered my sister-in-law had stolen my $300,000 inheritance to fund her extreme plastic surgery makeover. The money my grandmother had left me, meant to start my own small animal rescue, gone. All because I trusted my husband when he said adding Vanessa to our joint account would help with family expenses while she got back on her feet. Oh, but I did." Vanessa practically sang, settling herself onto my couch like she owned it. "And honestly, you should thank me. That money was just sitting there, while I put it to good use. Look at how gorgeous I am now." I felt my world spinning, but years of working as a veterinary technician had taught me to keep calm in crisis situations. "Does Marcus know about this?" I asked, referring to my husband, her brother. Vanessa's new lips curled into a cruel smile. "Marcus? Please, he's been so busy with his new promotion, he barely checks the accounts anymore. Besides, what's he going to do? I'm his baby sister." She was right about one thing. Marcus had been distracted lately, pulling long hours at his new executive position. We barely talked anymore, ships passing in the night. I'd been waiting for the right moment to tell him about my plans for the inheritance, to show him the business plan I carefully crafted for my rescue center. Now it seemed that moment would never come. "You had no right," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "That money was left to me by my grandmother. She knew how much I wanted to help animals, to make a difference." "Oh, spare me the St. Olivia routine," Vanessa cut in, rolling her eyes. "Your precious little animal shelter dream. Get real, I've done you a favor. Now you can stop pretending you're anything more than Marcus's plain little wife. At least one of us is doing something meaningful with their life." The casual cruelty of her words hit me like physical blows, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Instead, I thought about the last conversation I'd had with my grandmother, just days before she'd passed away. "Olivia, my dear," she'd said, her fragile hand squeezing mine. "I've watched you work so hard, saving every penny, helping every stray that crossed your path. This money, it's not just an inheritance, it's an investment in your dreams. Don't let anyone take that away from you." I promised her I wouldn't. And now here I was, watching my sister-in-law flaunt her stolen surgery, paid for with my grandmother's legacy. "You should leave now," I said quietly, standing up. "And Vanessa, you might want to ice that nose. It's starting to look a bit swollen." Her hand flew to her face, panic briefly replacing her smugness. Good. At least the Queen of Perfection still had something to worry about. After she left, I sat down at my computer and began to type. First, I pulled up all the bank statements, documenting every transfer Vanessa had made. Then I started researching the plastic surgery center she'd use, their policies, their payment procedures, their legal obligations regarding fraudulent payments. What Vanessa didn't know was that before becoming a vet tech, I'd spent 3 years working in medical insurance claims. I knew exactly how these high-end clinics operated, and more importantly, I knew their weaknesses. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Working late again. Don't wait up." I stared at the message, thinking about how distant we'd become, how he'd insisted I add Vanessa to our account despite my misgivings. "She's family," he'd said. "Don't you trust me?" Well, he was right about one thing. She was family, and sometimes family needed to learn the hard way about consequences. I opened my email and began composing a message to the surgery center's compliance department, then another to my grandmother's lawyer, who'd helped set up the inheritance. Finally, I reached out to my old colleague from the insurance company, the one who now worked as a fraud investigator. Vanessa thought she'd won, that her new face was worth destroying my dreams. But she'd forgotten something crucial about me. I'd spent my entire career helping injured animals heal. I knew all about patience, about waiting for the right moment to act, about the importance of thorough documentation. And most importantly, I knew that sometimes the best revenge wasn't swift or dramatic. Sometimes it was methodical, carefully planned, and executed with surgical precision. As I worked late into the night, gathering evidence and building my case, I thought about my grandmother's words again. Don't let anyone take that away from you. Don't worry, Gran, I thought as I attached the final documents to my emails. I won't. Vanessa wanted a transformation. Well, she was about to get one, just not the kind she paid for with my money. The response from the surgery center's compliance department arrived faster than I expected. Dear Ms. Chen, we take allegations of fraudulent payments very seriously. Our legal team will be in touch within 24 hours. I closed my laptop and looked at the empty side of our bed where Marcus should have been. It was 2 a.m. and he still wasn't home. Another late night at the office, or so he claimed. Part of me wondered if he already knew what his sister had done. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Having some complications with the healing. Need another $5,000 for follow-up procedures. Take it from the account or I'll tell Marcus about your secret meetings with his boss. I stared at the message, almost laughing at her attempt at blackmail. The secret meetings had been about planning Marcus's surprise birthday party 3 months ago. But Vanessa had always been good at twisting reality to suit her needs. The next morning, I walked into the veterinary clinic where I worked, trying to maintain my normal routine. I was checking on a recovering German Shepherd when my phone rang. Marcus's boss, David. Olivia. Just got a strange call from the fraud department at First National. Something about large transfers to a plastic surgery center. They're asking about signatures and authorizations. My heart raced. The wheels were already in motion. Yes, I was going to talk to you about that. My sister-in-law made some unauthorized transactions. I may need to take a few personal days to handle this. David's voice softened. Take all the time you need. And Olivia? Marcus doesn't know yet, does he? No, I admitted. I'm handling it my way first. After hanging up, I checked my email. The surgery center's legal team had sent a detailed questionnaire about the transactions. They were particularly interested in the intake forms Vanessa had signed, forms where she claimed the money was gifted to her. I filled out everything meticulously, attaching bank statements, text messages, and emails that proved the money was my inheritance. Then I added the recent blackmail attempt for good measure. Just as I finished, the clinic's front door chimed. I looked up to see Vanessa storming in, her face partly obscured by large sunglasses despite the cloudy day. What did you do? She hissed, getting dangerously close to the counter where a mother and her child were filling out paperwork. The surgery center just called. They're talking about payment verification and fraud investigations. I smiled politely at the startled clients before leading Vanessa to a private examination room. Lower your voice, I said calmly. You wouldn't want to strain your newly reconstructed vocal cords. She ripped off her sunglasses, revealing significant bruising around her eyes. Fix this now, she demanded. Tell them it was a gift. Tell them you authorized everything. I leaned against the examination table, crossing my arms. Like you told Marcus about taking the money? Or did you think I wouldn't notice the forged signatures on the transfer documents? Vanessa's face, what was visible under the swelling, paled slightly. He's my brother. He'll understand once I explain. Explain what? I cut in. How you stole his wife's inheritance? How you forged documents? How you tried to blackmail me this morning? The surgery center has quite a thick file on you now, Vanessa, and it's not just them asking questions. She grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging into my skin. You don't want to do this, Olivia. I can make your life very difficult. Who do you think Marcus will believe? His loving sister or his boring little wife who's never quite fit into the family? I carefully removed her hand, noting the fresh bruises her grip had left. That's assault, Vanessa. In a medical facility with cameras. Would you like me to add that to the file too? For the first time, I saw real fear flash across her face. What do you want? She whispered. I want my money back, every penny, plus interest. You have 48 hours to figure it out before I let the investigation proceed. Oh, and you might want to ice that eye. The swelling's getting worse. After she stormed out, I documented the assault and added the security footage to my growing file. Then I called my grandmother's lawyer again. The surgery center's preparing to reverse the procedures, he confirmed. They can't risk a fraud investigation. Their reputation would be ruined. But Olivia, you should know. Marcus called me this morning. My heart stopped. What did you tell him? The truth. That his sister stole your inheritance and used it for unauthorized cosmetic procedures. He's not taking it well. I thanked him and hung up, my hands shaking slightly. Then I heard familiar footsteps in the hallway. Marcus. He appeared in the doorway of the examination room, his face ashen. Tell me it's not true, he said quietly. Tell me my sister didn't steal from you. I pulled out my phone and showed him the documentation, the transfers, the forged signatures, this morning's blackmail attempt. With each swipe, his expression grew darker. I trusted her, he said, his voice breaking. I insisted you add her to the account. This is my fault. No, I replied, touching his arm gently. It's Vanessa's fault, and she's going to fix it. Just then, my phone buzzed with another message from Vanessa. You win. I'm taking out a loan to repay everything, but don't think this is over. I showed Marcus the text. She's right about one thing, I said. It's not over. The surgery center is launching a full investigation into her case. Apparently, she's not the first person to try this kind of fraud. Marcus sat heavily in the nearest chair. All those late nights I've been working. I was trying to save up to help you start your animal rescue. I wanted it to be a surprise. And all this time, Vanessa was. I felt tears prick my eyes for the first time since this began. We'll start over, I said firmly. Together. But first, your sister needs to learn that actions have consequences. As if on cue, my phone rang, the surgery center's legal team. They wanted to know if I pressed charges once their investigation was complete. I looked at Marcus, who nodded slowly. Yes, I said into the phone. I think it's time everyone learned exactly what happens when you steal someone else's dreams. 3 months later, I stood in front of the newly renovated building that would soon become Hope's Haven Animal Rescue, named after my grandmother. The inheritance money had been fully restored with interest after the surgery center's investigation concluded. Vanessa hadn't gone quietly. The day after she took up a loan to repay me, she'd shown up at our house. Her partially reversed procedures making her face look oddly distorted. You've ruined everything, she'd screamed, mascara running down her cheeks. The surgery center's filing a report about me. Do you know what this will do to my reputation? About the same thing you tried to do to my dreams, I'd replied calmly, watching as Marcus escorted his sister off our property. The surgery center's investigation had revealed a pattern. Vanessa had attempted similar schemes before, using other people's accounts and forged documents. The only difference was that this time she'd picked the wrong target. You did the right thing, Marcus said now, standing beside me as we looked at the rescue center's fresh paint and new signage. Vanessa needed to face consequences for once in her life. He'd been true to his word about starting over together. The long nights at the office had turned into evenings spent helping me plan the rescue center. Every wall we'd painted, every renovation we'd overseen, had helped rebuild not just the building, but our trust in each other. My phone buzzed. A text from David, Marcus's boss. Board approved your proposal. The company's annual charity donation will go to Hope's Haven. Congratulations. I showed Marcus the message, feeling tears of joy fill my eyes. The rescue center would have corporate backing, ensuring we could help even more animals than I'd originally planned. Look who finally showed up, Marcus muttered, nodding toward the street. Their parents were walking toward us, looking uncomfortable but determined. They hadn't spoken to us since Vanessa's schemes were exposed, choosing instead to believe her claims of being set up. We owe you an apology, their father said gruffly. We found out about the other incidents, the pattern of behavior we ignored for too long. Vanessa's agreed to get counseling, their mother added quietly. Real counseling, not just cosmetic fixes. I nodded, accepting their words but maintaining my distance. Trust, like the rescue center, would need to be rebuilt slowly, with careful attention to foundation and structure. Later that evening, as Marcus and I sat on our porch swing, I pulled out the last photo taken of my grandmother and me. What do you think she'd say about all this? I asked. Marcus smiled, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. I think she'd say her granddaughter turned out to be exactly who she knew you were. Someone who doesn't just rescue animals, but knows how to stand up for what's right. A week later, we held the grand opening of Hope's Haven. As I cut the ribbon, surrounded by supporters and four-legged friends waiting for their forever homes, I caught a glimpse of someone watching from across the street. Vanessa, her face now mostly healed but noticeably different from her original features, stood in the shadows. Our eyes met briefly before she turned and walked away, her designer handbag replaced by a sensible tote, her confident strut now a humble stride. I focused back on the ceremony, on the dreams that were finally becoming reality. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better, about building something meaningful from the ashes of betrayal. Ready to start saving lives? Marcus asked, holding open the door to our new rescue center. I smiled, thinking of my grandmother's words about not letting anyone take away my dreams. More than ready, I replied. After all, everyone deserves a chance at transformation, even if it's not the kind they originally had in mind. As we walked into Holt's Haven together, I knew this was just the beginning. Not just of my dream to help animals in need, but of a new chapter where I'd finally learn to stand up for myself, to protect what mattered, and to turn betrayal into something beautiful. The first rescue dog we'd taken in, a three-legged pit bull with soulful eyes, thumped his tail in greeting. Sometimes the best transformations I realized weren't the ones you paid for with stolen money. They were the ones you earned through perseverance, integrity, and the courage to stand up for what was right.